Hello, we're back today with some more literary fiction book recommendations. These are books that have changed my brain chemistry, have literally rewired the way that I think, and over the last couple of years I have just been falling in love with literary fiction again and again. So I thought in today's video we would go through some of my absolute favourites and convince you to read them. Also, hi, if you're new here, I'm Natalie. I post bookish videos, usually about once a week, consisting of book recommendations, reading wrap-ups, book hauls, all that kind of thing. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, feel free to like and subscribe. I'd love to have you over here. Before I even started reading literary fiction, I wasn't 100% sure on what classifies a book as being literary fiction over general fiction. And to be honest, I think sometimes the lines are still a little bit blurred. Well, for me anyway. According to the research that I've done, and according to the books that I've read, literary fiction tends to be more concerned with themes and characters over plot. I would say that's what all of these are, in a variety of subgenres. So we've got some dark literary fiction, we've got some horror adjacent literary fiction, a little bit of dystopian in here, a couple of historical literary fiction, which I have discovered is a massive passion of mine recently. I'm hoping that if you've never read literary fiction before, this will give you some ideas of where to start according to what your taste is. And if you're already a seasoned reader, then hopefully you will get some decent book recommendations from this, because they are amazing, in my opinion. So without further ado, let's just get into the books. Starting off strong with a book that I think has got better with age in my mind. I've left it to marinate for a bit, and I actually went back and adjusted my review, because 7 months later, I'm still thinking about this book, and it definitely has become one of my favourites, and that's the Mercies. There's an isolated community of women. All the men have, I think, died at sea, and witch trials commence. But what I will say is that it's not fantasy at all. It is very much rooted in historical fiction based on real life facts to do with, is it King James? King James II or something like that. He wrote a book about demonology, which essentially just villainises women for having any kind of autonomy, sexual desire, or owning land. And the little bit of research that I've done after reading it, that does seem historically accurate. Anyway, so all the men kind of die out and the women are left to fend for themselves, which really isn't a problem because they are, as women are, incredibly strong, self-sufficient, and just kind of crack on with things. And it's only when the outside world then starts to intervene and become involved in this village of women who are doing absolutely fine that trouble kind of commences. So you're following this woman who gets sent over as a wife to this priest, person of the church anyway, to come over and basically see what's going on and set this village right and make sure that they're coping all right without their men. She comes and starts to integrate as part of the village. As I was reading it, I just become more and more emotionally attached to these characters and their plights. And the women that live here, I think, is it Norway or Iceland where these women live? So it's a cold climate. I think she's come from England. So she really does have to adapt to this new way of life. And she befriends another woman who lives in a cabin down the road, who essentially teaches her the way to survive and the way that they live in these cold winter months and the hard times that ensue. And they make an unbreakable bond. It's essentially a story of sapphic longing, female autonomy, misogyny. What really struck me as absolutely incredible with this book is I actually haven't read that many books about the witch trials and how it all started. And really, it does sound really far-fetched that women were believed to be witches. You know, how did this stand? How do people actually believe this? When you read a book like The Mercies, you see that fear, isolation, gossip, suspicion, othering, all of this contributes to people turning on each other, especially when there isn't obviously any kind of outside information. It's literally just what they're fed by the church, and you can just see how powerful and dangerous this can be. And this book's just absolutely incredible. Highly recommend. Next up on the docket is another historical literary fiction by none other than Taylor Jenkins Reid, and that's Atmosphere. I have spoken about this book in a fair amount of detail on previous videos, which I will link below, so I'll keep this kind of brief. Essentially, this is also sapphic, historical fiction set in the 80s, which is wild to me that the 80s is now considered historical. Anyway, these two women joined NASA under the space program. As you can imagine, women weren't really taken very seriously in the STEM field, or in kind of, they were just getting a foothold in the career arena. These two women meet each other, and you are following a space exploration where one of them is up on a space mission, the other one's in the control room, and what unfolds, all of the details of their personal life and all the spacey kind of stuff. It just makes for such a fantastic, propulsive read, and I highly recommend. And obviously the writing is beautiful, because I have come to realise that Taylor Jenkins' Reid is a little bit of a literary genius. My next recommendation is what one would call a modern classic. Again, I have spoken about this fairly recently on my January read and wrap up, and it was my best book of the month, my only 5-star, and that's Carol by Patricia Highsmith. You might have heard of it as The Price of Salt, I think it was previously published as. Again, I won't go into too much detail about this because there is a full review of this already up. If I have spoken about these books in more detail in other videos, I will link them down below. You are following two women. One works in a department store and the other one is going through a divorce. They essentially start corresponding and meeting up. They go on a road trip. 1950s America, where women really didn't have much freedom, especially when it comes to their sexuality. And this is just an incredible love story with a bittersweet ending. It's at a time when women were put in impossible situations where there really was no right decision. It's absolutely fantastic. I can't stop banging on about this book. If you haven't read it yet, you need to read it, and I am going to watch the film because it's got Cate Blanchett cast as Carol, and I just think that is genius. I can really see her in that. The 2026 release has already made this list, and Emily Austin. Her new book is This a Cry for Help. I only actually finished this a couple of days ago, still kind of forming my full thoughts around this, but I had to include this. If you love any of her other books, or you enjoy kind of quirky, slice of life, a little bit weird, a little bit dark, but also quite humorous books, then I think that you will absolutely love this. Following a librarian, and it's set in kind of modern day where we are now, where people are campaigning for book bans and things like that. As with all of Emily Austin's books, she is a lesbian. Prior to coming out, she was in a long-term relationship with a man who she's found out is now dead, and she's kind of having spiraling thoughts as to what happened to him. It's actually so interesting because you're following not only her in a monologue, but you are also following her through her therapy sessions, her conversations with her wife, as well as this kind of bizarre email trail that essentially starts out with somebody asking loads of questions about birds. Independent journalist gets involved and starts making trouble for her at the library. It's just absolutely fantastic. I love being inside Emily Austin's characters' heads. I really do need to get a tripod, as you just... oh. Anyway, it is so funny, it's so relatable. I love her characters, I love her writing. As with previous Emily Austin books, I would highly recommend the audiobook because I do feel like you get a really good sense of the character's humour listening to it via audio. This next book was sold to me as more of a literary thriller. I would say it was more of a literary suspense. It doesn't really have any of the heart-pounding, kind of anxiety-inducing plot lines that a thriller usually does. It's more about the atmosphere and the writing and getting to know the characters and the overall themes of the book, and that is The Silent Woods by Kimi, Cunnigham Grant. It's about a father and daughter who are living out in the woods where they don't really have much interaction with the outside world. You don't really know why they're there or what's happened. There is a man that lives like way up on the mountain who they sometimes see, and then one day the daughter comes across a female traveller out in the woods, and that's where the story starts to unfold. Stunning imagery and the depth of these characters just took my breath away, and I was so surprised that by the end of this book I was absolutely sobbing. And if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know that there's only a handful of books that have ever made me cry, and this was one of them. I am just fascinated with the folklore surrounding Appalachia. This doesn't have any folklore in it, by the way, but it is set in the Appalachian foothills, woods. If you're looking for a literary fiction that is dark, disturbing, and will probably haunt you for the rest of your life, but is not a horror, although it feels like it at times, then My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell is likely to shake you to your core, because it definitely did for me. After I read this book, I sort of just had to sit in a dark room and stare at the wall. It was just horrifying. The feeling of dread and unease and queasiness was visceral while reading this book. You are following Vanessa as an adult, but she is taking us back to her childhood in an all-girls boarding school and was groomed by her adult male teacher. But even as an adult, she hasn't fully come to the realization that what she experienced was abuse, and she's still grappling with the ongoing relationship that she has with her abuser. The writing is absolutely phenomenal. I still can't get over the fact that this was a debut novel. The author has a PhD in creative writing, so she's literally a doctor of books. If you feel like having your soul crushed, then I would pick this up, but obviously it goes without saying, check triggers. Perhaps you might want to feel a little bit existential. Perhaps you don't need to have all the answers. And if that's the case, I would highly recommend I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. This is such a short book, but it is so powerful. It has a lot to say in very few words. A young girl who is locked in a cage with 39 women. They've had no interaction with any other people. Buzzer sounds, all the guards that were essentially there literally just to bring them food have completely disappeared. They managed to escape the cage and go overground. And the protagonist that you're following has spent her entire life in captivity. So you don't know if this is set in present day. You don't even know if it's on the same planet. You have actually no idea what is happening. You are following a group of women as they kind of form different friendships and relationships, try to build some kind of civilization. The main protagonist kind of goes off on her own. And yeah, it's really sad. You don't get any answers, but it is such an amazing read. I absolutely loved it. It's a modern classic for a reason. Speaking of existential, we're here with all the happy books today, aren't we? How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu. This book, do you know what? It sent me in a bit of a spiral. I'm not joking. You definitely have to be in the right headspace to read this, because you start off thinking that it's just going to be head-hopping literary fiction that's following different people in different timelines, and you're going to learn a little lesson from each. Yeah, but also let's make it really dark, existential, and a little bit sci-fi dystopian at the same time. The premise is so interesting. So it's 2031 in Siberia. The icebergs melt due to global warming, and essentially it releases this deadly virus that has been dormant, that gets released into the world. You're just kind of following the ripple effects of this. Some of the perspectives that you're following are just absolutely awful. There's one, and it's written on the back. You are following an employee who works at a theme park specifically set up for dying children, and you're having interactions with the mother of a terminally ill boy, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. It's so depressing. Some of the perspectives are really quite weird, but the ending I just thought was absolutely phenomenal. I really want to reread this one actually. And it's blurbed by Samantha Shannon. Have we got anything a bit happier? Not really. We do have some quirky literary fiction, and that's Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. I think that she is a very good pipeline author for Emily Austen, and the other way around as well. If you like either of their writing, you'll like the other one, because they're very much in the protagonist's head, slice of life, a little bit quirky, a little bit weird, kind of mundane, but also beautiful, in my opinion. So this one follows a woman called Kiko. She is 36 years old and she works in a convenience store, and she loves her life, but society's expectations start to get to her, and this is her grappling with this. And I just loved her. I love being inside her head. It's very short, but it is unputdownable, and this is one that you could just read in one sitting. And then if you read this and really enjoy it and you want something darker, more in the horror realm, you could try your hand at Earthlings, because that one is so fucked up, but it's excellent. Have you read Chlorine by Jade yet? If not, why not? This one is kind of magical realism, but it never really gets explained. So as long as you don't mind being left with a bit of ambiguity, I think that readers who like their literary fiction dark or want it with more of a horror focused lens would absolutely love this, because I know I did. So Renyu is a swimmer and her coach is literally pushing her to the brink to succeed. This is her spiraling thoughts and her deteriorating mental health, as well as some sapphic longing chucked in there for good measure. And basically, she's turning into a mermaid. That's all I can really say about this. This is one that just needs to be experienced. It is a wild ride. It is pretty dark. It does have a little bit of body horror in there as well, but it's beautifully written. It's almost poetic, and I would highly recommend. The Country Will Bring Us No Peace by Matthieu Simard is absolutely stunning. The writing in here is mesmerizing. Again, this is kind of ambiguous, so you have to kind of be okay with that. It's more about the writing, the vibes and the atmosphere rather than overall plot or even massive character development. I feel like this is a masterclass on how to write succinctly, powerfully and beautifully. It is following a married couple. They have moved to an idyllic village kind of in the woods. They are trying for a baby and not succeeding, so they think they're going to move to this village and have a better life. Wrong. So melancholy and depressing, and just has that dark, ominous feeling following it throughout. And the writing and the techniques that the author uses really portrays that dismal atmosphere. Forget the past, love each other in the present moment, cut off from the world, we'll conceal our scars beneath the sleeves of our false hopes. Bar. Strange and poignant, and really takes the time to explore grief in its many forms. So we've now come to the end of that list. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, because I'd love to have you over here. Until the next one, I'll see you again in another one soon. Bye.